Good morning. Today is subtracting across zeros. That is real fancy for sometimes we're going to have subtraction problems where some of the digits on the top are going to be zeros. And so, of course, if we got a zero on top and any other digit on the bottom, we're going to have to regroup, or as we call it in subtraction, we are going to have to borrow from the next largest place value position. And so when we do it across zeros, it can be kind of tricky. And so I would like you to make sure that this morning, or when you find yourself watching this, I'd like you to have a piece of scratch paper, and I want you to fold it into eighths. And at this point, pause the video, go get your paper, fold it into eighths, come back. It is the best way to slow Mr. Tillich down when he's talking. Just pause me, right? And then one more time. And you have 8 boxes. What I'm doing is setting up my scratch paper, and that's the way that we set our scratch paper up here in 4th grade. And folding your papers into eighths means you got 8 boxes on the front, and you got 8 boxes on the back for a total of 16. Okay, so we are subtracting across zeros. We're recognizing that when we subtract across zeros, it just means that we have a string of zeros in our top number as digits. We're gonna have to borrow. In this example, we go to the thousands place. The example on the back, the only difference is it goes into the 10,000s place, the two numbers that we are subtracting. So I would like to start with a few problems using the independent practice. I would like you to have page 101 from your math book. That is your independent practice for chapter 2, lesson 7. And I'm going to circle the problems that we're going to do. Okay, so we'll do number 3. We will do number 10. We will do number 8 and number 5. Mr. Tillich was scanning the independent practice, looking for the best problems that will provide us with good examples for subtracting across zeros. Remember to pause the video. Now that you know what problems I'm going to be doing, you know I'm skipping around. I would like you to make sure that you're understanding that it's important that you're pausing the video once you know these problems and write these problems down in the box. So pause the video now and do so. And that will make sure that you're ready to go. As I teach you one of the problems, as I approach one of the problems, why don't you pause it, solve it first, and then watch me solve it as you check for accuracy. Number 3, 2040 minus 946. Okay, and so we are subtracting, and we have zeros as digits in our top number. We have to borrow. So let's scan. Let's take a look and see what we have going on here. 1, we have a 0, and that means that we're certainly going to have to borrow from the tens place. I see that once I borrow from this tens place, it's going to make this 4 or 3. Okay, and so now all of a sudden this number is going to be, this top number will be too small to subtract, so we're going to have to borrow. And then we have this 0 here and a 9 underneath it. We're going to have to borrow. And so I have gone through and I've understood that the only place value position where I'm not going to need to borrow is from my thousands place, because it has a 0 underneath. The 0 is smaller than the 2. So let's start. Because this is a 0 and we have a 6 underneath it, we have to borrow from the tens place. Take that 4 and we'll make it a 3. Our 0 here in the ones place becomes a 10. Let's keep on going. We have a 0 here. Okay. We're going to have to borrow from the thousands place. We're going to take one of those thousands and we're going to give it to the hundreds place. 1,000 is equivalent to 10 100ths. So now we're taking a look here. We can do 10 minus 6. 10 minus 6 is 4. 3 minus 4? Oh, we cannot do 3 minus 4. The 3 is smaller than the 4, so we must go next door and borrow 10 more, as you may have heard before. So that 10 now is a 9. This 3 is a 13. If all that got jumbled up for you right there and you weren't able to follow that, rewind the tutorial and try it again. I am providing you with, providing for you an answer to check your own work to see what you already know. 13 minus 4, that is going to bring me to 9. 9 minus 9 is 0, and 1 minus 0 is 1. Ones, tens, hundreds, comma. Your difference is 1,094. So that was number 3. You can notate that over here in your notes. I'm going to move over to this second box, and although it was not the second number I circled, I am going to go to number 5. 12,000. If you didn't do it in that order, that's okay. 12,050 minus 3,162. Making sure to keep your place value positions lined up. All right, so here we've got a 0 in the ones place and a 2 underneath. Got to borrow. We have a 5 in the top number in the tens place and a 6. We're going to have to borrow. We have a 0 here in the hundreds place with a 1 underneath. We're going to have to borrow. I'm scanning the problem before I just start solving it. Okay, I got a 2 smaller than the 3. I'm going to have to borrow. The only place value position that we have that does not need to borrow is the 10,000s place, because it's a 1 and underneath it is a 0. So let's start with the ones place. Let's go to the tens. That 5 becomes a 4. The 0 becomes a 10. Then we have a 0 in the hundreds place. We've got to borrow from the thousands place. That 2 becomes a 1. And the 0 in the hundreds place becomes a 10. Here I have a 1 in the, or I had a 2. Now I have a 1. It's even smaller than that 3 on the bottom. So now I need to go over to my 10,000s place, and I'm going to take that 10,000s. That becomes a 0, and that 1 becomes an 11. Okay. Now I can start subtraction. I'm going to need to borrow again as I come through, but I can at least subtract the ones place. 10 minus 2 is 8. 4 minus 6, I cannot do. The 4 is smaller than the 6. So let's go to the hundreds place. That 10 becomes a 9. And the 4 in the tens place becomes a 14. Adding 10 each time. 14 minus 6 is 8. 9 minus 1, 8. 11 minus 3 is 8. Check out that answer. And then we have a 0 in the 10,000s place. Ones, tens, hundreds, comma, 8,888. Alrighty. So let's come on down to number 8. 60,032 minus 21,833. All right, we're going to have to borrow in the ones place. Top number is smaller than the bottom number. Tens place, well, it's eventually going to be smaller because I'm going to borrow from that 3 and make it a 2. So I know I'm going to have to come back and borrow again there. This 0 is smaller than 8, got to borrow. This 0 is smaller than the 1, I have to borrow. It looks like the 10,000s place is nice and healthy. We've got a 6 on top and a 2 on the bottom. I will not have any issues there. So let's start at the ones place. I can't do 2 minus 3, So I'm going to cross off that 3 and make it a 2. Even though it makes it smaller, I'm still going to do it. My 2 in the ones place becomes a 12. Here, I have a 0 in the hundreds place. Okay? I got to borrow. But my next place value position in the thousands place is also a 0. I cannot borrow from that 0. Now I'm borrowing from the nearest place value position that has something I can borrow. This 6 becomes a 5. That 0 becomes a 10. And now I need to borrow from that 10 so that I can get my hundreds digit big enough to subtract 8. That 10 becomes a 9. And that 0 becomes a 10. And I can start subtraction. I know my tens place is still waiting for me though. 12 minus 3 gets me to 9. 2 minus 3 I cannot do. I'm going to borrow from my 10, becomes a 9, and my 2 becomes a 12. Take it nice and slow. Stay organized. 12 minus 3 is 9. 9 minus 8, I can do that. It's 1. 9 minus 1 is 8. And 5 minus 2 is 3. Ones, tens, hundreds, comma. 38,199. Alrighty. So far, number 3, I've got 1,094. Number 5, 8,888. And in number 8, 38,199. And let's do our last problem. Look at this string of zeros in number 10. This is really subtracting across zeros. 600,000 minus 28,005. We got some zeros on the bottom here to work with though. Alrighty. What are we gonna do? Well, I gotta borrow. Don't necessarily have to borrow. Don't have to borrow. Definitely have to borrow here in the thousands. Definitely gonna have to borrow in the 10,000s. And I have a 6 in my 100,000s place. So what is it that we do? Well, I can't borrow from the 0 to do anything to the 0. I can't borrow from that 0. Can't borrow from that 0. Certainly can't borrow from that 0. But I can borrow from this 6. Watch how this takes shape. I'm going to cross off my 6. It becomes a 5. I can make that now a 10. But I need to make that large enough in the thousands place. So I'm going to borrow from that 10, and I'm going to make it a 9. So that 0 can become a 10. Then I'm going to take that little tiny 10, and I'm going to turn that into a 9 so that I can make this 0 a 10. Right? So now I'm going to borrow from that 10, make it a 9, to make this 0 a 10. Right? So I'm giving something to all these zeros. Even though I can do 0 minus 0 and 0 minus 0, I still need to borrow so that I can subtract 0 minus 5, right? And so I'm borrowing from all my zeros across the zeros just so I can help out my thousands place and my ones place. So this 10 will also become a 9 so that my 0 in the ones place can become a 10. 10 minus 5, 5. 9 and 0 is 9. 9 minus 0 is 9. 9 minus 8 is 1. 9 minus 2 is 7. And 5 minus nothing is 5. Ones, tens, hundreds, comma. 571,995. All right, boys and girls, subtracting across zeros.